What is your plan to fix our failing roads?
Wow, I got a good one there. Hey, it's simple. And when I say it's simple, it is truly simple. It's been said here a couple times. We have to have some strategic planning to fix our roads. You know, I've heard, I don't know this to be true, but I believe it is, that every year some members of the board drive through the town and decide what roads are going to be done. Okay? You know, we've got some nasty roads out there. And just because that one may not be as nasty as that one, why would we do that one? You know what I'm saying? We have to go through our town, assess what our roads are like, totally, and then come up with a strategic plan to spend whatever money is allocated annually to fix that road or them roads, and just go through the list. You gotta have planning. Right now it's done willy-nilly, and I trust Jim is gonna look at things like that. We can't just, okay, a bunch of board members drive down the road and go, oh, yeah, that one should be fixed. That's not the way to do it, I'm sorry. But I think it's gonna take strategic planning and an effort to actually plan ahead.
Like I said earlier, we need a 5 to 10 year plan for the roads. I will commend the village. They have a map up there and their roads are graded from 1 to 10 on how bad they are, so they know which roads they're going to be fixing. We need that too. Whether the engineering firm we have now or maybe a different one can go out and rate them. I believe they call it the PACER rating. And the other thing is, then we have to do it. We have, I believe, $275 or so $1,000 a year for roads. That's not going to get very many roads done. We're going to keep falling behind. Sooner or later, it's going to be no roads at all. It'll be gravel. That's why I brought up having a bond issue on this so we can address our roads. I'm not sure, but I think the village has a bond issue for their roads. Look at what other municipalities do. Take a hint from them.
So I think it's been said a number of times, but I think we should make sure that our engineering firm is actively looking for grants. I mean, that's an easy, it can be obtained. And also I think with a new DPW going on, we have the opportunity that maybe there should be a report. Maybe there should be a report graded and put out to the town, and just to see which is the worst ones and what needs to be, their attention to be, you know, from the worst to the best. And you know, maybe we can do a little at a time, and then hopefully we can, between grants and everything else, we don't have to go into the bond thing. I just don't feel comfortable right now just taking on more debt when we don't have a clear path to pay it.
I currently work for a manufacturer in New Berlin, and we have a pretty strong maintenance department. We have a CapEx, a capital expenditure plan that we review. We've got a 3 and a 5 year plan. What are we going to be doing for upkeep in our facility? What needs to change? We just paved the parking lot this last summer. So where I'm going with this is DPW, I think if they don't already, we'll need to have a maintenance planning document in place. Need to do the grading of the roads. How is that done? We need to determine a way to do that that's efficient and effective. We need to look at state and federal grants moving forward to be able to pay for these projects as we identify them and put them in our plan. We need to have that strategic road plan be a 10 to 15 year plan. So we're planning for it, we're saving for it, we're hunting for grants. We're also doing maintenance in that time frame. Do we need to, I question this, do we need to look at a different engineering firm? I have some serious concerns over what just happened and is ongoing right now with Buena Road. It's, I believe, several $100,000 over budget, and I don't believe we have the funds to pay for that. How did that happen? I can tell you from my experience, in my past that I've run big, large construction projects. I've dealt with large contracts with contractors, reviewed those contracts. Not every contract is good. Usually the contract is written in the favor of the contractor. So I think that our board had a failure in this recent contract. I think our engineering firm had a failure, and I would think also our attorney had a failure. And I think we need to look at all those areas as we move forward to see if we have the right people on the bus.
So I agree with everything that's been suggested here, with the exception of the bond issue. I'm with Phil on this. I do not think that this town is in a position to be borrowing more money at this point in time. That is just, I have not seen or heard anything that would convince me that that is a good idea, knowing what I know about the budget. All of the other suggestions up here about a strategic plan, about assessing it against the state standards, about pursuit of grant funding, about a capital improvement plan, all fundamentally should and absolutely need to happen. The bottom line though is, if we don't grow and drive the revenue side of the ledger, none of that is going to show demonstrable real progress of the kind that people are seeing the need to happen. You have to grow the revenue side of the equation. All of these other things are good ideas. They will tactically do a little bit more on this road here and a little bit more on that road there, and we'll see a little bit over here. But in terms of the significant problem that we have in this town with respect to roads, unless we drive more revenue with thoughtful, planful, desirable development, the way we talked about earlier in this session, we're not going to see the progress that people are hoping for. Who is it, Chris?
All right.
No.
Roads,
I think it's Doug. It's Doug.
Yep. Don't you remember, Dave?
moderator.
Dave kind of wanted I get the hot potato. All right. Not quite. In regards to the current issue of Buena Park Road project coming in at over $600,000 over budget, what would you have done differently to avoid that from happening, and what steps would you put in place to prevent it from happening in the future?
Well, first off, when you have 36 change orders, somebody in that building should have been asking, how much is this gonna cost? Every time you have a change order, it's gonna cost you money. I don't think it happened. Should the board maybe have been a little more proactive? Maybe, I don't know. It falls back, unfortunately, to the people that were meeting with them on a bi-weekly basis, hearing the change orders and not doing them. One of the things to stop that would be obviously if we have a part-time administrator, I believe our ordinance committee and our operations committee are meeting this week to talk about that, to try and put some guidelines in so it doesn't happen again. Right now, we don't have anything. Who's gonna be on the hook for it? I don't know. I would love to say the engineering firm, but unfortunately, I think it might be the town. I hope not, but I think it will be. This is something that's unacceptable. Like I said, it goes back to the people that were in that building there when they had their bi-weekly discussions. You know, I'm on the school board now. We just had a meeting last week because we are talking about updating the fire suppression system, and we met. And it's going to be a change, but it's still going to be within budget. But the first thing we got was, how much money is it going to cost us?
So I think there's a lot of blame to go around on this. One of the questions I had is, I heard we got like 4 estimates. Did everybody look? I think a lot of the board members should have looked at the estimate. I mean, the more eyes on something, the better. You know, if one estimate's $1.2 million and the other one's $600,000, maybe we should look at that. Also, I think it's easy to spend somebody else's money, to sign a change order like that and not think, oh crap, this is getting out of hand, is a big deal. And I think there needs to be a policy in place that, hey, we have a big project like this, maybe we need a monthly report to the board sit down, this is where we're at, from the engineering firm and the DPW, and I think that the fact that we're sitting there going, oh, now we need to make a change, just shows that, we're going about this, that this has been done for, 30 years like this. We never had a problem until now, but I don't think we should wait till there is a problem before we get a policy in place.
I think a lot of things could have been done differently. First off, I think it's imperative that you have a specification for a project, any major project that you're embarking on. Contractors bid to the specs, so you get more even bids coming in. Once you receive those bids, you've got to pour through them. You've got to look at them and make changes. There are exceptions to almost every contract. If we went forward as a town board and didn't have any exceptions to the contractor's contract, that's a problem. And it can't be just the board members that are doing and looking at that and making those exceptions. We've got to rely on the engineering resources. We've got to rely on the attorney to look over those documents and pour through them and make sure that we aren't taking exceptions and we're writing a contract that's fair that we can enter into. Obviously, we didn't do much of that. If we've got a $600,000 overrun, that's a big miss. And with my background and experience, for 9 years, I worked with hydroelectric dams all around the world. I worked with very large governments and large power utilities. I can tell you that their specifications came in the form of a phone book, and that we would divide up in teams and we would pour through the contract and go through and take exceptions. And oftentimes our bids had to be close to 100 pages to win the award. And it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of discussion taking place. I don't know if the board brought any of the contractors in and had them formally go through their proposals, but that's something that should have been done. And then when you're down selecting to the two vendors that you're considering, you need to also do more due diligence with them and ask more questions and make sure that you've got a robust contract going forward. And then you have to hold their feet to the fire. It's project management. You got to work with the Gantt chart. You've got to make sure they're on time. A biggest part of the overruns right now is they were grossly not on time on this project. A lot of overruns, and that's very costly to us. So we have to have that baked into the contract that they have to meet their deliverables and their milestone dates. Obviously, they didn't do that.
So I agree a lot with what Bill said. Bill and I both have significant, large project experience in the corporate world, running projects much, much bigger than the Buena Park Rd project. But that project had all the issues that are being described up here. One of the biggest ones, as a sitting board member, I will tell you, there was no visibility into that project. There was no visibility, there was no status until it was way, way, way too late. And that is, I take accountability because I'm a board member and I should have seen that, but there was no visibility brought forward. There was no regular status reporting. There was no steering team of any sort, board member, engineering firm, construction firm, DPW, who should have been regularly meeting and bringing forward statuses of where the project was at. What's been completed, what's planned next, what are the major issues that we're facing, what are the risks that we're facing, and what are the plans to address them. That is standard large project management 101 that is not that difficult to execute. And we have to put processes in place that make sure that those kinds of things happen. The overruns that occurred, as we unpeel the fact that the post-mortem of what actually went on with this thing, there were issues way, way, way back in the design phase, that they tried to crawl their way out of once it was too late. And the cost overruns associated with those things just continued to pile up, and change orders were being rubber stamped in the field as just saying go, 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 with not even a question in terms of what's it going to cost, what's the impact going to be. Big problem. And I fully applaud the work that the operations committee and the ordinance committee are doing to brainstorm more constructive processes that we need to put in place to ensure something like this does not happen again.
I'm going to be gentle in my remarks. Coming with a PMI, which is Project Management Institute certificate for project management, which I acquired in 1989. I've managed millions of dollar projects, and both in private sector and public sector. For the county, I handled all of the IT infrastructure, and that's a lot of thought has to go into replacing PCs, servers, on and on. Every time a building was built on county grounds, I was part of that project team. So, policies, procedures, and understanding what they need. Contracts, RFPs, RFBs, okay? When you let a contract out, you should be relatively assured that it's gonna come within that budget. Anything over 5%, I would have lost my job. And that's the honest to God's truth. If a project I was running came in over 5%, I would lose my job. So, first you gotta identify what the problem was. I took a bunch of courses called ATS, Analytic Troubleshooting. And what that means is breaking down the situation to the highest point, not the lowest point. Everybody can point fingers back and forth, and that's what we got going on right now. We have to figure out how to actually handle a project going forward. And lastly, you can't just rely on the board to rubber stamp a contract. I have had many of occasions I've sat on scoring committees where people score the bids. And then they have a bid process after that to meet with the one they chose. And if anything's changed, they gotta go back to the drawing board. So, there's a lot of steps in a project, and we don't follow them. And hopefully, with Chris's board committee and my committee, we'll be able to lay down some fundamental policies and procedures.
All right, gentlemen. What standards of behavior do you expect from yourself and fellow officials? And how do you address public criticism or misinformation in a way that keeps town government respectful and constructive?
Who's it at, Chris? Who's got the mic?
Phil.
Sorry.
Yep.
Sorry.
It's Phil's. Phil's turning the barrel.
All right, can you repeat the question one more time?
Okay. What standards of behavior do you expect from yourself and fellow officials? And how do you address public criticism or misinformation in a way that keeps town government respectful and constructive?
So, nobody likes criticism, but it's a fact of life. Anybody that's married probably gets a little criticism here and there. And I think one of my strengths is I can disagree with somebody on a particular issue, and I can still have a conversation with them. And I think that's the biggest thing, is to be able to have a conversation with somebody that you don't agree with. As far as, I think if the town did a little bit more better job of putting out there all the transparency, that would take some of this, keyboard warrior, this, that, and the other thing out of the equation of, let's let the town report the facts and the issues, and then have the discussion, not rely on somebody else's Facebook or, hey, a friend of a friend told me this. I think that's a big problem, but I think also you just gotta treat everybody with respect.
What standard of behavior do I expect out of myself? A professional. I'm a servant type leader, so I'm really here for the people. I'm not here for myself. And I want to be open. I want to have open dialogue and interaction. I want to take input. I don't have all the answers. And oftentimes, when I get the input, I may have had a position that I was taking, but after further input and hearing everybody else's ideas, I'm willing to change. And I do that quite often, and that's part of my management style and my leadership style. When it comes to criticism, I listen to the inputs I'm receiving from others. Again, I'm not perfect, so it's a good chance I made some mistakes, and I want to hear those out and understand that. I want to hear from somebody else, other than myself, somebody else's perspective. And I want, above all, I want to respect those people that I'm having a dialogue with, and I would expect that they would give me respect back. So if we can all be respectful, then we can have a healthy, good dialogue, and we can be very productive out of that and move things forward.
So what standards do I expect of myself? Honesty, integrity, accountability. I hold myself accountable for every action that I take, every word that I write. Transparency and openness. One of the things I found peculiar about this role is people are kind of all weirded about this whole open meetings law thing. Like, whoa, well, you're saying it on the record, well, be careful. And I'm like, I don't get it. Nothing I say, nothing I write to anybody with respect to anything in this job, I would not hesitate to have out in the open and honestly just laid out there. There's nothing that I hold back, nothing that I'm covering up, nothing that I'm talking to somebody about in the back room about that I wouldn't want anybody else to hear. So I don't get that whole thing. I mean, I'm very, very intentional about every email I write, everything that I say to anybody, and I welcome any of that be put out in the public domain in any way, shape, or form. So if somebody wants to open a records request me, go for it, man. I have no qualms about anything that I've ever written in this job being out there, at all. When it comes to criticism, I welcome it. To me, like Bill said, I don't have all the answers. If I have a certain position with respect to anything and someone doesn't agree with me, I want to hear about it. I want to hear and I want to understand why. There's an awful big chance that there's a learning opportunity for me there, but I will get a perspective that I didn't have before. That's huge. So I'm not afraid of criticism as long as it's respectful, as long as it's honest, and as long as it's, I welcome criticism when it comes with and here's a solution, here's something that maybe you didn't think about. That's the best kind of criticism because it's also an opportunity to learn, hey, there may be another way to address an issue. So I welcome criticism, and I hold myself to a very high standard in terms of how I operate in this role or in any role that I play in my life.
Well, I know some people don't like the way I approach things. That's okay. That's okay. I can understand that. And when somebody points something out to me, I take accountability for what I do. I don't shirk it. I don't hide it. I never will. That's not who I am. But if you're going to ask something, you're going to get a direct, straight answer from me. It's not going to be sugar-coated. It's not going to be wrapped in a bow. It's going to be how I feel. Now, there's a lot of times I put stuff out on the internet, okay, as a citizen, okay? As a citizen, I have that right. There's a document that was produced by the ordinance committee that's hopefully going to get passed one of these days, that says what the conduct of a supervisor or a elected official or an appointed official has to do or should do when it comes to social media. Now, the state of Wisconsin highly recommends that no state employee open up their social media, their personal social media, to anybody from the public other than family and friends. Okay? People don't realize that that's open meetings. If I were elected and I put something on my personal page, that is subject to open meeting requests. And it has to be saved. Okay? These are the type of things that people don't think of. Now, have I said things that I probably regret? Yeah, I'll admit it. But like I said, I shoot it right from the hip. I think about what I'm going to say, and I never say anything that I didn't intend. So that's where I stand on it.
At my age, I've had a lot of criticism. Being married almost 55 years, I've had a lot of criticism, and usually I'm wrong. I believe being a public official, you have to hold yourself to a higher level. Have I always been right? No. When I was on the board the last time, did I make some mistakes? Most certainly. Did I have to go to court? Yes, I did. And I hold myself accountable for that. I made a mistake. Did I get 3 different answers for 3 different lawyers? Yes, I did. But when it comes to it, yes, I made a mistake, and I'll admit that. The people in the town, need to know what's going on. I hear we might have a Facebook page. Great idea. What about the people that don't have a Facebook page? Maybe take a page from the village. They have, I believe, a quarterly newsletter. Maybe that's what the town needs. Have a quarterly newsletter out there so the people that aren't on Facebook know what's going on in the town.